Hey, we are back for week number, I guess it could be 3, could be 4 for you. I don't know which one it is. Some of you started late, some of you started early. But this is actually our 3rd session, and I'm hoping and praying this is helping you some. We're so excited that you're back hanging out, or maybe this is your first time. Welcome to When You're Anxious, and I'm hoping and praying that this connects with you some way, form, or fashion. Hey, let's dive right in. Jake, why don't you tell us about how anxiety kind of cripples us a little bit?
Yeah. Anxiety is this crippling fear it's tied to the unknowable and the uncontrollable. It's just these things in your life. You can't know what's going to happen. You can't control it. You don't have any control in it. And a lot of times when we don't know what's coming, when we can't do anything about it, it kind of just paralyzes us. We can't move forward because of what's going on. And I think social media plays a huge role into it.
You think?
And I think a lot of times we think that we're helping other people with our social media. And so what ends up happening is you have people, and when you see things on social media, you're like, man, that guy's doing so great. And so you see the good things that they post, and you're like, man, I stink. He's awesome.
Yeah.
And it just makes you feel terrible.
And the crazy thing is, we hear people like us, we talk about this all the time, but you hear people talk all the time like social media is bad. It's not good for you. There are good things, by the way, about social media. You get to keep up with all your friends from high school. You get to keep up with, their kids. I mean, there's all kinds of good things that come from it. But we tell you all the time how bad it is, but it's amazing how we always go right back to it, which means there's a great possibility we're addicted.
Yeah.
Addiction to social media is probably worse than drugs. And it takes us down bad roads. Yeah,
and it's one of those things that when you know that there's a problem, you know that it's not good for you, but you can't seem to get away from it.
But we keep doing it.
Yeah.
Hey, side note, challenge to you. I dare you to try to lay down social media for 3 weeks. Just fast it for 3 weeks. Everything. Shut it down and watch what happens with the cobwebs in your head. I've done it, and I've done it for 3 years now. I fasted it and never went back to it. And to be honest with you, I hadn't missed it now. Every now and then I get on my wife's and look at it, and once I get started and looking at one little post, I got to keep going. I realize, like, oh my gosh, I'm getting addicted. Take it back. All right. So,
and so I think more than anything, the first thing that we got to do today is we just have to eliminate the shame that's associated with anxiety. Yeah. And so, shame is not going to help us. Shame's not going to help you. Shame's not going to help anything about the situation. It's only going to make it worse. And so just any shame, any guilt, any condemnation that you feel, we're going to get rid of that because we're all in this thing together. Like, we all showed up to the When You're Anxious community group. So let's just say we're all in this thing together. None of us are going to feel shame associated with this. And so we're going to kind of dive in today into Philippians chapter 4, verses 4 through 7. You want to read that real quick?
Yeah, it says, rejoice in the Lord always. Always is always, in the good times and the bad times, the valleys and the mountains. We're going to rejoice in the Lord because He is still God when we're struggling and when we're not struggling. And so it says, rejoice in the Lord always. Again, He's going to repeat it. Anytime the Bible repeats itself back to back like that, that's a confirmation this is something that God really wants us to do. It's actually a command that you could put an understood you for all the English majors out there, and I don't know much about English, as most of y'all can tell when I preach. But you, understood you, command, you rejoice in the Lord. And again, I say, rejoice, rejoice. You ever heard that song? Sang in Sunday school, Independent Baptist Church, back in the 70s. Hope you remember it. Let your reasonableness, that's a long word, by the way.
Reasonableness, yeah.
Yeah, let your reasonableness, I can't say it, be known to everyone. The Lord is at hand. Do not be anxious about anything. Well, that sounds easy, don't it? Thank you, Jesus. But in everything, by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known to God, and the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus.
So my favorite part of that passage is that he tells us, he said, the peace of God which surpasses all understanding. Because I think that's the kind of peace that we need, because I think all of us have experienced anxiety and fear and insecurity and doubt.
What most of us are anxious of is the unknown. Mm-hmm. And so there's a lot of things we don't understand. And honestly, I tell you what, the anxiousness, really, we're all a little crazy in our head. We always talk about crazy Aunt Sally at our Thanksgiving dinner, but in reality, we kind of crazy Aunt Sally every now and then. Mm. And so we all get these paranoid thoughts in our head. We start coming up with all these thoughts in our head that's not even true.
Yeah.
and we get freaked out about something that's not even happened.
Yeah.
And so basically, I feel like there's a place where he's saying, hey, you may not understand it, but don't be anxious about it because it ain't even happened yet.
Yeah. And really, anxiety, like, it's not logical. A lot of times it's not comparable. It's not scalable. And so, like, I can't look at your anxiety and your fear and be like, well, my fear is bigger than your fear. Because to you, it feels the same. And I think I realized this for the first time it was a couple years ago now, we did our series on fear.
Yeah.
And so we all go to this pet shop in Birmingham. And Pastor Andy's biggest fear is snakes. And
that's a lot of people's fear.
And that is a reasonable thing.
Nightmares.
It's a reasonable thing to be scared of. Like, they're snakes.
Yeah, they bite.
And they kill
they
people.
hurt.
Yeah. They're poisonous. And so they started talking about getting a giant python out. And we were trying to film this video to be funny. And so we start looking up. We're trying to find you. And we can't find you anywhere. We call you. And we're like, man, I'm already in Gardendale. I'm halfway back to Coleman. I'm not holding a snake. And so I'm sitting here. I'm holding the snake. And I'm not worried at all.
Oh, yeah.
Then they pull out a parakeet. Like, they got this tiny little bird. And I start freaking out. And they're like, hey, you gotta hold the bird. I was like, I'm not holding the bird. I'll hold the python, but I'm not holding the bird.
Yes, you was freaked out. You was running and screaming like a little kid.
Yeah.
Like running.
And so they're like, put out your finger and the bird will jump from my finger to your finger. So I'm putting my finger out there and like I can't even look. I'm turning away. And like I screamed like a girl. Like I'm like, ah! Like that jumped on my finger.
Well, you screamed. I'll be honest with you. I just turned around and left in my truck and went to the house. I was smarter than all y'all.
Yeah. And so then later last year, the students did something else on fear, and they made me go to Sportsman's Lake and feed birds, like feed the ducks.
The ducks.
Yeah. And so they're like, we are not letting you leave until you put some bird feed in your hand and let them eat out of your hand. And it took me 2 hours.
Oh, yeah.
To get up the courage.
Oh, yeah.
And they're like, there's a 4-year-old boy over there that is letting these birds. And so Bree did it. And so they're like, this girl is sitting here like doing it. I'm like, I can't do this. Like,
where'd your fear of birds come from?
I've tried to think about it for a long time of where it came from. And they're like, you live with birds all the time. So like I see birds and they don't bother me, but it's like when we make eye contact, there's just something that arises.
Something deep in their soul.
I think it goes back to the Passion of the Christ movie.
What?
There's a bird that comes down and it pecks the eyeball out of one of the other guys, and I saw that when I was like 11. And every time they like flap their wings at me, it does something in my soul. And so I think all of us have those things that you're like, man, it makes much more sense to be scared of snakes than to be scared of birds. But I can sit there and I can hold a snake, but I can't hold a bird. And I think that's why
I ain't touching snakeskin boots, snakeskin purses, anything got snake involved. Sayonara.
Yeah.
See ya. Peace out.
And when you have these anxieties that don't make sense, people can look at you all day long and they're like, man, I can give you 13 reasons why your anxiety is stupid. Like,
yeah, but everybody has anxiety.
Yeah, birds don't have teeth. Birds aren't poisonous. Like
they got what do you call it? Beaks.
Yeah.
That will peck you.
Yeah, and so they can tell you all these different things, but in that moment, nothing that you say is going to help me. And so there's people that it may not be birds, but you have real anxiety. Like you have like, man, I'm just afraid I'm going to lose my job. Like I always feel like I'm not doing enough. Like I always feel like my boss is going to come in one day and be like, dude, you've been missing the mark. Like, I'm just going to let you go. Or maybe it's, man, I'm never going to find somebody that's going to stick with me long term. Like, this is just going to be another failed marriage. Like, this is just going to be another breakup. And
or I think a lot of people have a fear of man. Like, I feel like I'm going to fail people and they're going to be mad at me or angry. And it scares you to death to even get to know people because you're scared you're going to fail them. And then you're missing out on what God's really called us to, which is relationships.
Yeah.
And I mean, so that fear can go a jillion different ways.
And that's why we're diving into this today, where it says it surpasses all understanding. Because I can't just sit there and look at you and be like, man, everybody loves you. Like, they love being around you because there's still that thing inside of you. It doesn't matter what I say. There's no like. I mean,
it's a belief system.
Yeah.
We created these belief systems in our head that really are really wrong and messed up. They're backwards. And it's really, honestly, it all comes back to changing our belief system. It's a lot easier for me to say that than it is for us to do it. There's a lot of things in my own personal belief system that really needs to change, but it's been there for so long that I really believe it's true, when in reality it's not true. But it feels true.
Yeah.
I mean, everything about it, but it's not.
Yeah. And so we're not going to sit down today and try to reason with your fear. Like, we're not going to try to tell you that your fear is dumb. We're not going to try to tell you that your fear is legitimate, but hers isn't. And yours is a big fear, but his is small. And we're not going to try to compare. We're not going to try to reason with it, because honestly, it's not a logical thing. And what we need today is we don't need logic. We don't need reason. We don't need natural understanding. What we need is a supernatural intervention. And so that's what the Lord promises today. And so as we're talking about this, I just kind of want you to think about what are the places in your life that you just kind of continually go back to. Maybe it's something that it may not relate to everybody else. It may not seem legitimate or scalable.
But it haunts you.
It haunts you.
It owns you. It controls you.
Just kind of day to day and all these different things. And so in Philippians 4:7, it tells us, it says, God will give you a peace that surpasses all understanding. And honestly, like, that is what we need.
And that's what we long for. Like, please give me that peace.
And so I've heard this passage preached. I've preached this passage, and we talked about this before, is you kind of come to somebody and, well, what does the Bible say about being anxious? No, it says don't be.
Don't be.
Yeah.
That easy.
And so you walk away thinking, well, if I do have anxiety, there's something wrong with me. Yeah. And that if I'm just supposed to pray about it, it says don't be anxious about anything, but pray about everything. Why? Like, maybe I'm not praying right. Maybe I'm not doing it right. Why?
Maybe God doesn't love me.
Yeah.
Maybe He likes them better than me because they look more peaceful than I do. And maybe my faith is weak. Maybe I'm not strong.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, there's a place where Christianity, the way a lot of times we say things, even in Christianity, can cause people to walk in more shame. A lot of times we don't realize what we're saying. We'll say, well, hey, just trust God with your fear. Just trust God with your anxiety. And your thought process is, I've been trying to do that for 20 years and I still feel trapped. So apparently I'm not really where I'm supposed to be with God, and maybe God doesn't care about me as much as anybody else, which leads to deeper shame, deeper hurts, pains, and that's not it at all. That's not it at all.
Yeah. And so is there anything in your life that just sets you off? Like, you get angry about it and it doesn't really make sense? Like, it's something that makes you mad more than a normal person. And so I think about...
Oh yeah, when somebody drives in the passing lane.
Like on the left side?
Oh yeah. Yes. I'm telling you, they're like, I got foam coming out of my nose, smoke coming out of my ears.
Yeah.
I'm like, it's probably because really the Lord's trying to teach me how to be patient.
Yeah. So I remember when I was a kid, whenever I would like wrestle with my dad, if I ever grabbed his fingers, like did anything with his fingers, like he would just lose it, like just go crazy. And so I knew, like, if I wanted to have fun wrestling and not get hurt wrestling,
don't grab your dad's
don't touch his fingers.
What's up with your dad's fingers?
I don't know. Like, it went.
Don't grab your fingers.
Yeah. Have you ever fought with Travis?
No.
Have you ever slapped him on the back of the neck?
No, yeah, I'm the same way. Don't hit me in the back of the head. Somebody comes up and slaps me in the back of the head.
Yeah.
Honestly, I got a lot of stories I could tell, but y'all might not ever like me again. But I've had people slap me in the back of the head, and it didn't turn out good.
Yeah, and so I think all of us, like, we have these things that set us off, and we don't really understand why. We don't know why.
No.
Like me with the
for
birds.
Me, it hurts. It hurts to get slapped in the back of the head. And it's just reaction. You do things reacting. Like, whoa.
And then I think that our anxiety, it kind of creeps in these different areas that we don't understand. And so I've talked to you about this before. Like, I have times where I feel like I have to go. For some reason.
To the bathroom?
No, like, I'm just like, I'm in this place. I'm like, I got to get out of here. I got to go.
I got to go. All right. That's what I do.
And so when we first started launching our Arab campus, I knew I was supposed to be in Arab sometimes. I knew I was supposed to be in Coleman sometimes. I couldn't ever get comfortable. And it was because I got put in this position. I felt insecure. Like, I felt like I wasn't qualified or equipped or ready to be a campus pastor.
Yeah.
And so just all the time, I always felt like I was doing the wrong thing. And so if I was in Arab, I was like, man, I need to get to Coleman. Like, I need to be in Coleman. If I'm in Coleman, I'm like, man, I need to leave. I need to be in Arab. Why am I not in Arab? And it was just like I was always in the wrong place, always doing the wrong thing. And I even have that sometimes today now, like, where I'll get into a hurry when I don't have anywhere to be.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
we talked about that last week.
Yeah, like I got to get somewhere, but like I don't really have.
We call that the hurried syndrome?
Hurried sickness. Yeah.
Hurried sickness. Yeah.
And so I think when we talk about these things, I think when we read scripture, I think so many times we can get so accustomed to it that we just kind of roll with it and we keep going with it. But he says, don't be anxious about anything. And I think, like, when we read that, we really have to be like, is he serious?
Yeah.
Like, does he really say, don't be anxious about anything? Because I think we can hear it and just move past it.
Yeah.
But does God really mean that? And if he does, how? And I think that we've asked that question before, but we've never really gotten an answer because I think that we've tried it in the natural, but we're not resting in the supernatural because we need someone
That's
or
good.
something
That's
beyond
so good.
us to help us.
Yeah. And that's why we look into other areas physically to help us.
Mm-hmm.
And I really think the only physical thing that will help us is other people.
Mm-hmm.
That's why community is so large.
Yes, it's
I mean,
huge.
like, that's why I think it's awesome that you're surrounded with people that probably struggle with the same thing. And there's a whole lot of people that's not in these groups that probably need to be here because I think everybody struggles with some sort of anxiousness, some way, form, or fashion. And really the only physical is other people that walk with Jesus helping each other.
Yeah. And so really like it's kind of just this idea, and really point number one today is just that you have to admit that it's bigger than me. And I know we talked about this last week, but I really think that it's just, I don't think we can say it enough. And so I kind of confessed to you before we started this that we filmed week 1 and I had this anxiety in my head that I wasn't telling anybody about. We filmed week 2, I still had this anxiety in my head, and it was like I'm writing the material on anxiety. Like I can't be just going through it. I didn't want to admit it to anybody, so I was like, man, I'm gonna conquer this on my own. And so I got so convicted sitting here last week talking about how much we need community. I literally got done with filming this video last week, and then went and found somebody. I was like, man, I've got to tell you what's going on.
I know it hurts my feelings that you didn't talk to me about it.
Well, you're my boss, and
I don't care. I'm your friend too.
yeah. And so, I think that's what we have to get through today. Is that for me, like I sat here for the last 2 weeks, and I feel dumb telling you again, but for 2 weeks I've told you, like, man, when you'll tell somebody, if you'll let somebody in, that's where healing comes from. And I feel like I can sit here in week 3 and tell you and really mean it in a different kind of way. It's not just something where I'm like, man, I think this is going to help you. Like I experienced a peace last week when I finally let somebody in, when I finally talked to somebody and just said, hey, you know what, like this is what I'm dealing with. This is what I'm struggling with. And it gave me some perspective. It gave me some freedom. It gave me some peace that surpasses understanding.
Now,
that's why we need.
I'll give you another side of that though. So when you do let somebody in, let the right people in. Look, you need to that's why you need to build a relationship so you'll figure out who the right people are. You need somebody that's safe. You need somebody that's merciful. You need somebody that understands fear and anxiousness. That's not going to give you just the spiritual answer. That's not going to gossip about you behind your back. And some of you are thinking like, well, that's why I don't open up, because of that right there. You hit it. I promise you there are people out there that's safe. I promise you.
Yeah.
You got to find them. And they're around you right now. Wherever you're, they're around you right now. You just don't, you got to get to know these people so you can find out who they are.
And so anxiety, it gives you this idea that you have to keep it secret and you have to keep it hidden. And you're like, man, this is my solo moment. Like this is like I'm going to defeat this. I'm going to fight this. And it makes you feel like you can't tell anybody. And so anxiety and then the shame that comes along with it, they work together and they keep you stuck. As long as you have anxiety and shame,
combo.
You're so isolated you can't do anything.
They do
about
work
it.
hand in hand. Anxiety does produce a lot of shame. And it produces a lot of, the anxiety and shame together will produce strong depression. It'll create some serious depression.
And so what I wanted to do is I wanted to conquer my anxiety, and then I wanted to tell people about it.
Yeah.
And I would be like, hey, I was dealing with this. I'm not anymore. I'm good now. But there's no victory in that. Like you can't win that until you actually let somebody in.
Yeah.
And a lot of times we think, man, I'm gonna pull away for a little while, but then when I get better, I'll come back.
Yeah,
And
that'll work. Well, it's that fight or flight thought process. Either you're going to fight and fight with somebody, not be a Rambo, or you're going to fly. The only thing about a lot of people are like, man, if I could just go to another city, if I could just go to another state, if I could just get away from this, I can get away from all my problems. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Because my big question for you is what are you going to do with you when you get there? Because you're still going with you. In reality, the problem is not really people around you and where you live. The problem's probably still you.
Somewhere on the
inside. And God wants to
inside.
deal with you on the inside. So if you want to fly off to Arizona or fly off to New Jersey and just think, I'm going to start a new life, you still got to go with you. And you're not going to get free until you deal with the issues on the inside.
Yeah. I like how Yogi Berra said it. He said, wherever you go, there you are.
You're always there.
And
glad to meet you again.
Yeah. And so the verses leading up to that, don't be anxious about anything, like they seem like they don't fit.
Yeah.
And so I love especially how the message says it. It says, celebrate God all day, every day. I mean, revel in Him. Make it as clear to everyone as clear as you can to all you meet that you're on their side, working with them and not against them. Help them see that the Master is about to arrive. He could show up at any time.
Oh, yeah.
Don't fret or worry about anything, right? And so, like, you're just like, it's kind of like you sit down with somebody, and if I was to tell you, man, like, I'm dealing with some anxiety, like I'm dealing with some fear. Like for you to be like, man, God's good, isn't He? Like, let's celebrate God together. Isn't He good? Like, hey, let's go tell some people we're on their side. And oh yeah, don't worry about anything. Like, don't be anxious. And I think what He's trying to do is He's trying to kind of flip the script and to show us, like, man, like we kind of have this, like, we've built up anxiety so much that we, like, there's just this fear associated. Like, you're never just like, man, I'm dealing with anxiety. It's, hey, I'm dealing with some anxiety.
Yeah, and I know as a Christian I'm not supposed to, so I hope you're a safe place.
Yeah, and so I think that's why, like, letting people know that you're on their side, I think that is a huge thing.
Yes.
Like, I wish that was the defining characteristic of Christianity. Like, people would be like, hey, how do you know that guy's a Christian? Well, because he's always on my side. He's always for me. And so...
God, isn't that hard to find? That's a whole nother topic. Like, I want to be on everybody's side.
Can I tell you why I told Travis about my anxiety and I didn't tell you?
Yeah.
So at Christmas, Travis bought me some boots.
You're telling everybody about that.
Yeah,
this is the first time I've heard this. I have no clue what he's fixing.
I should have told you before. So at Christmas, Travis bought me some boots for Christmas.
Oh, he's trying to tell you need to step up your style or something?
I think so, but like, he bought me these really nice boots. They're the nicest pair of shoes that I own. And I texted him. I was like, dude, thank you so much. Like, I can't believe you bought me these boots. Like, these are awesome.
Yeah.
And he texted me back. All he said, I'm in your corner.
Yeah.
He said, I'm in your corner. And I don't know what it was about it, but it struck a nerve with me.
So I need to buy boots to get me in your corner? Is that what it is?
No, it was just that phrase, I'm in your corner. So last week, I was like, man, I need to tell somebody. And the first thought that came to my mind was Travis is in your corner.
Yeah, that's good.
And so I started telling people that. I'm like, man, I'm in your corner. Like, and it meant something to me. And I read that verse and I was like, man, like, I want everybody all the time to think, man, I need to tell somebody Jake's in my corner.
Yeah.
And so, like, that's who I want us to be, that guy.
I mean, that's with everybody.
Yeah.
No matter what sin they got in their life, I want to be in their corner.
Yeah.
No matter what struggle they got in their life, I want to be in their corner. Mm-hmm. I want to be in everybody's corner. Anyway, that's another message. That's going to preach.
And so then in the next thing that he says, he's like, man, rejoice always. Like, celebrate life. Celebrate God's blessing. And I think he tells us, he says, celebrate God every day. And I think in the midst of our anxiety, we can miss sight of what's going on. And so when I was telling Travis about what was going on, literally as I was saying it, I kind of got some perspective. Like, just saying it out loud kind of brought some healing. And I was like, man, I am living my dream.
Yeah.
Like, I'm literally, like, I'm living my dream. Like, I prayed about and dreamt about planting a church, planting a campus one day, and I'm sitting in the midst of it. Like, me and my wife, we worked forever and prayed forever and waited forever to have a baby that's going to turn 18 months old this month.
Come on.
And, like, we're sitting here in the midst of just our dreams coming to life, and still the enemy's able to steal our joy and our happiness and our celebration because we got our eyes fixed on our anxiety and not on what God's actually doing.
Yeah, anxiety will steal your dreams. Mm-hmm. You'll never accomplish your dreams if you constantly focus on the anxiety. Mm-hmm. That's why it's probably important that people write their dreams down. Mm-hmm. You need to write your dreams down so that you can remind yourself, this is what God's put in my heart. This is the God dreams that God's placed here. And the enemy will do everything he can to destroy your God dreams by constantly get you focused on your fears and not what God's placed in your heart. Mm-hmm. Very easy to do.
Yeah, and more than anything, that's what this group is it's an opportunity for you to readjust your focus, for you to change your perspective from your anxiety, from your doubt, from your fear, to be able to focus on what God's actually doing in your life, to celebrate what God's doing.
Yep.
And like scientific research, like not even inside the church, but just like just research into science, it shows that if you struggle with stress and worry and anxiety, telling a small group of people, not a large group, but like just a few people that you can trust, getting alone with, sharing with them immediately, there is some relief to your anxiety when you let somebody into it.
That's true.
And it says the peace of God will surpass all your hearts and your mind's understanding. It's plural. It's not your heart and your mind. You only have one. And so I think what we can kind of take away from that is if you have this anxiety, you're like, man, I don't know how to conquer this, I don't know how to beat this. Get around some people that are.
Yes.
And get around some people that you see, like who are the people in your life that you're like, man, I want to handle stress and anxiety the way that they do.
Yeah.
And I think that's a huge thing. And so when you let somebody in, just talking about your shame, talking about your fear, it zaps the authority and the strength that it has in your life. It just takes all of the strength away from it when you just let somebody in, just talking about it. And then I think the second thing is that it's beyond your strength. You're no match for your crippling fear. Like you have to come to the realization that you can't beat this on your own. It's illogical. It doesn't make sense. So how are you gonna?
I've tapped out many times from anxiety.
Yeah. How are you gonna beat this if you can't reason with it and it doesn't make any sense? And so like we can't. Have you ever gotten to that moment where you're like you have a bad thought about like what happens if the people that I love died, or like what if this terrible thing happens?
My kids.
Yeah.
I have now. Y'all don't think I'm a weirdo. Like it's amazing how often I used to, and I don't have it anymore. I'd have these. I think it's demonic. It was scary thought processes about my kids. I'd have wicked thoughts of my kids, like getting eaten by crocodiles and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I know I'm crazy. I told y'all, and it was real. I get cringe factor. I start freaking out. Like I would have just, and now my daughter's driving, so I get these cringe factors of her having car wrecks and. Just driving me. It scares me. I will not let Caleb ride with her.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Because I can't imagine both.
Yeah. You have this moment and you're like, oh, like I don't want to do this.
There's more reasons to that than just my cringe factor.
Like I don't want to do this. I don't want to go down this path. And then it's like 5 minutes later, you're just swimming in this sea of all of your fears of all these terrible things that are going to happen.
Yeah, and it's not real, but it starts feeling real. It goes back to what we talked about just a minute ago.
Yeah.
It's fear of something that's not even there.
Yeah.
But you're shaking. You got to remind yourself, like this is just this. In Jesus' name, I pray this get out of my head because I do think it's.
I think the biggest cause of that in the world is WebMD. Like you get a little bit of gas, you go on WebMD, and you're like, man,
I've got cancer.
Yeah, and so I talked to a girl who works at the hospital yesterday. She said 90% of the people that I deal with are people who have a little bit of gas and they get on WebMD, and you just go down this rabbit hole of man, maybe this is like maybe this is cancer. Like maybe I have appendicitis.
I don't think I've ever had a little bit of gas.
And so the whole book of Philippians, we talked about this before, just the context. It's not just one sentence, one verse, like it's the whole thing. And so we're in Philippians chapter 4. Philippians chapter 3 is all about where Paul just starts boasting about all the things that he's done. He's like, man, if anybody has any reason to put confidence in their own human effort, it's me. Like these are all the things that I've done. He said, but I put no confidence in my own efforts. I rest in what Jesus has done for me. That's the whole of chapter 3 is all about that. And so I think what this is with this, we have to come to the end of ourselves and say, man, this is beyond me. I can't trust in my own human effort, my own ability to conquer these things. I have to rest in what God does. And it's kind of like the idea of stop, drop, and roll. Like, how many times have you heard stop, drop, and roll? Like, they kind of ingrained it into you as a kid because as soon as you catch on fire, the first thing you want to do is like take off running and you panic. And you're not thinking clearly.
I've never caught on fire, so I have no clue what I do.
Well, I haven't.
Have you?
No, I haven't.
Oh,
but
I thought you were going to give me something I never knew about you.
But the first reaction when you catch on fire is to panic, and when you panic, you run. And so they try to ingrain it in you so much.
I did have a wreck one time and jumped out, took off running. I don't know why, but I did. I just went.
And so what you need to do is that you need to stop, and you need to drop, and you need to roll, and use something outside of you to put out the fire. And so when you roll on the ground's actually putting out the fire in your life.
Yeah.
And so I think that's what he's telling us to do. He says, don't be anxious about anything, but in everything, pray.
Yeah.
And so I think the key is that whenever these things hit, that we stop and we drop and we look to someone else to put out the fire in our life.
Yeah.
And when the anxiety hits, we're going to panic. And when the anxiety hits, we're just going to take off running.
Yeah.
But we need to ingrain it in our minds so much that when anxiety hits, I'm not going to panic. I'm not going to run with this thing. I'm going to stop and I'm going to pray. I'm going to ask for help.
Yeah.
Whatever that looks like. Because in reality, it says that the God of peace will be with you.
Yeah.
And so it's not just that Jesus brings peace into the situation.
He is peace.
He is peace.
Yeah. He is peace.
Yeah. And so
that's why it goes back to putting your identity in Him, trusting Him. Mm-hmm. And that's easy to say. It's hard to do, but that's the key.
And I think that's why anxiety is a symptom and not the root.
Yeah, it's a bigger, anxiety is just a part of a bigger problem.
Yeah, and so we don't really have anxiety issues. I think what we have is we have a distance from Jesus issue, because
Which, by the way, don't let that cause shame.
Yeah,
a
and-
distance from Jesus. I think it's more of, I think, let's say it a better way. I think it's an area of maybe a lack of understanding of who Jesus really is.
Yeah.
A lot of times we've grown up in this belief system of who God is that's really messed up. And God wants to change our belief system, which will help with our anxiety. And that's probably where you really need to start to help get out of the trap.
Yeah, and it's not that you don't love Jesus, and not that you're walking with Jesus.
Yeah.
It's more of there's this area of your life where you're not letting anybody in.
Yeah.
And inviting Jesus into those moments is where you find peace. And so the Philippians, they took this so seriously that when Paul wrote these things to them, what they would do is they would just say little prayers like all throughout the day.
Yeah.
And they'd start turning it into songs is actually which I think is really funny.
Jesus, I need freedom.
It sounds like Buddy the Elf. You know that?
Oh, yeah.
He's like, I'm here with my dad. And so this is what the end of that verse in the Message says is, don't fret or worry. Instead of worrying, pray. Let petitions and praises shape your worries into prayers, letting God know your concerns. Before you know it, a sense of God's wholeness, everything coming together for good, will come and settle you down. It's wonderful what happens when Christ displaces worry at the center of your life.
Yeah.
And I think that's what happens is when we invite Jesus in, it's not that our worry goes away. It's not that, like, honestly today, I still feel a lot of the anxieties that I felt last week. And it's still a battle, it's still a fight, but it's not the center of my life anymore. Yeah. I'm not controlled by it. And so it kind of pushes things to the side. And so honestly, in that moment of just opening up and inviting somebody in,
Yeah.
it invited Jesus into the moment. And so he was able to speak some truth into me and encourage me, but really it was just an opportunity for Jesus to come into this area that I'd isolated myself in.
Yeah.
And that's where the outpouring of God's presence has brought this sense of wholeness in God's presence, and it shifted the center of my life from worry to being Jesus.
Come on.
And really, I think that's our kind of our idea and our hope for this whole series. This whole thing that we're doing is that we can just begin to push worry to the periphery instead of just at the center.
Yeah.
And so I would say more than anything, I think when we think about the idea of just stopping all the time and praying, like I feel anxious, so I'm going to stop and pray. I feel anxious, so I'm just going to tell you, like, hey, I feel anxious, or I'm going to text you, I'm going to call you. It feels weird, but I don't think it's weird to ask the God of peace to give us peace in our anxiety.
Yeah.
I think it's weird that we're all anxious.
Yeah.
And that it's normal. And so I think we just have to kind of come to a place where we're willing to do something different, to do something that's beyond us and not what we usually do, so that we can be free from the worry and the stress that we usually live with.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yes. Well, the big picture is community is key. So keep coming, keep building relationships, keep focusing on community. I promise you it will help you relieve some of your anxiousness and stuff. Listen, we're so thankful that you're here. Can't wait till next week. I hope that God does something special with you. Hey, open up and have some conversation right now. Peace out. See y'all.